What is up, winning team? Hello, everybody. Today we're continuing on in this book here by none other than Ron Hubbard, The Dianetics, The Evolution of a Science. And we're going to be reading in chapter 4 today, talking about the basic personality. Now, in the previous video, I basically spoke about how he just created a case for the fact that we are all demon possessed. So go and check out that video. You want to watch it all the way through because I have definitely what I think have backed up my points pretty strongly. And I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on the craziness. Today, we will be continuing in chapter 4, which is the basic personality. I'm sure there's going to be plenty to talk about. I'm going to get straight into it. If this is your first time, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe. And if this is your first video of the Scientology videos, please check out my Scientology playlist where you'll be able to see this book in the thumbnail to show you the videos where we're reading it. So here we go. One day, a patient fell asleep. When awakened, he was found to be somebody else. Okay, so if you guys remember in the previous video, you know what? I'm going to just say it just in case because we haven't read it yet. In the previous video, I basically said that I believe that Ron Hubbard is going to find a way somehow to disconnect us from this idea of a demon and connect it as something else to do with us as a personality thing. And I explained how that actually perfectly aligns with kind of like the Christian biblical understanding of being demonized. So let's continue. When awakened, he was found to be somebody else. As somebody else, he was questioned very carefully. This patient, as himself, had a sonic memory block, audio memory block, and was colorblind. He was very nervous ordinarily. Just now awakened into being somebody else, this is what it says here, the quotations, he was calm. He spoke in a lower voice tone. Here, obviously, one was confronting one of these electronic screw-ups the savants call schizophrenics. Oh my gosh, this is crazy because the whole chapter about this in this book that I mentioned in the last video, a whole chapter about this. But anyway, but not so. This was the basic personality of the patient himself, possessed of an optimum brain. Okay, here we go. It was very rapidly established that he had color visual recall on anything, tone audio recall, tone audio and color visual imagination, and entire coordinative control. He knew when he was imagining and when he was recalling, and that too was something he had not been able to do before. He wanted to know something. He wanted to know when the operator was going to help him to get himself squared around. He had a lot of things to do. He wanted to help his wife out so she wouldn't have to support the family. How unlike the patient of an hour before. So something's changed in this individual, his personality supposedly, right? He obligingly did some mental computations with accuracy and clarity, and then he was permitted to lie down and sleep. He woke up with no recollection of what had happened. He had his old symptoms. Nothing could shake those electronic blocks. He didn't even know if he had eaten lunch, the color of my scarf, and as for his wife, served her right for being a condemned woman. Oh, wow. This was a first introduction to basic personality. It was a long way from a last acquaintance. It was found that it was possible to contact optimum brain operation in a number of people. So is he trying to say that if I'm understanding this correctly, he's basically suggesting that there is this version, this optimum version of us somewhere inside of us, but it's just where do we get it? So he's saying like with this guy, he had who the man he was before this sleep and whatever happened wasn't his optimum function. He then wakes up in his more optimal function and then goes back to sleep, was it? Permitted to lie down and sleep and then comes back to his original self. And that's what Ron Hubbard here is suggesting is this basic personality. And the basic personality contacted were invariably strong, hardy, and constructively good. Again, he's saying strong, hardy, and constructively good. Who gets to constitute what good is? What is good? When you say he was good, is it because now he wanted to look after his wife? Are we classing that as good? Which again, I've said to you guys before, not to say that we can't comment on what we think is good or bad or good or evil, but it's just very vague and it's very gray. It's a very big gray area. We're supposed to be doing maths and science here. So just saying, they were the same personalities as the patients had in a normal state, minus certain mental powers, plus electronic demons, and plus general unhappiness. I found that a hardened criminal with an obvious criminal mind was, in basic personality, and sincere, intelligent being with ambition and cooperativeness. And he's probably right. I've done some research into a lot of psychological things myself because I just am interested. One thing that I found, like, if you look at the brain scans of diagnosed psychopathic people, right, who are diagnosed psychopaths, which when we hear the word psychopath in the term that we hear it in, it's always in the negative Netflix documentary, type of way. But the people who have matching brain scans is psychopaths, but also CEOs, chief executive officers, the same brain scans. I think they're the PET scans, if I'm not mistaken. So what he's saying here, he's got some kind of scientific basis. He's saying that the traits that can be seen to go one way or another essentially can come from the same exact place. So a criminal mind can observably, in their basic personality, a sincere, intelligent being with ambition and cooperativeness, which might be a way you would describe a CEO versus a criminal, hardened criminal. So there you go. This was incredible. If this was basic brain, then basic brain was good. Then man was basically good. Social nature was inherent if this was basic brain. Well, you see, again, he's just making all these statements and he's not really explaining a lot because we've only compared two types of people. We can't just say because, we found that some criminals had sincere, intelligent being with ambition and cooperativeness that now all of a sudden, so that just proves that all of humans are just good, because it's not enough, in my opinion. Maybe it is for you guys. Tell me in the comments. It was clear, that is clear. We pull ahead of the story. Interesting how he's talking about clear. So clear, which we know is what they're trying to get us to become when you go through what they call processing with this e-meter thing where they help you to delete your reactive mind stuff that happens. Prior to that, you're literally called a pre-clear. And so now this concept of clear is where this is all coming from. He's forming the basis of all of this. I can so see why the science community was eating this up, man. It's like science fiction. It's enough science that people who are scientific can enjoy it, but then the parts that we can't really explain still and we don't really want to accept, we just call fiction. I think about that all the time. Like, science fiction is one of my favorite as well, as far as categories. I just find it interesting that in order for us to enjoy it, we have to call it science fiction because we have to be so sure and so important to make sure that we don't ever entertain anything that isn't exactly science as we perceive it. So people were uniformly miserable, being aberrated. People were uniformly miserable, being aberrated. The most miserable patient on the rolls had an aberration that made her act happy, and the most nervous aberree one would ever care to encounter had a mastering aberration about being always calm. She said she was happy and tried to make herself and everyone believe it. He said he was calm. He instantly flew into a nervous fit if you told him he wasn't calm. Tentatively and cautiously, a conclusion was drawn that the optimum brain is unaberrated brain. Okay, what does this word mean? Because I don't know that I understand what this word means, and he keeps using it. Also, you see me, guys, I'm in the business of, look, on planet Earth, let's use language that everybody can explain. This is something I can't stand about the science community. They always use all these words just to be we're better than you. We are so smart. It's you could actually say that in such plain English. And a lot of time they use it as a way to there is a definition here, which I'll read in a second. A lot of times scientists will use these types of languages in order to distract you from the fact they actually have no idea what they're talking about. But anyway, so aberrated or aberration, according to this definition. And again, I've just read here at the top, it says editor's glossary of words, terms and phrases. And it just has this little paragraph about what this is about, and then it's just signed the editors. We don't know who these people are, but anyways, nevertheless. Excuse me. So, aberrated, affected by aberration, any deviation or departure from rationality. That's what I thought. Used in Dianetics to include psychoses, neuroses, compulsions, and repressions of all kinds and classifications. From Latin aberrare, to wander from, away. Do you know what's actually interesting that he says to wander from? Because do you know the definition of the word? There's a Hebrew word, it's called chet. Do you know what that's the definition for? The word? Sin. And do you know what the definition of sin is in this Hebrew chet word? To veer off the right path. Interesting. Okay, so deviation from rationality. All right, cool. So where were we? Okay, tentatively and cautiously, a conclusion was drawn that the optimum brain is the unaberrated brain, that the optimum brain is also the basic personality, and that the basic personality, unless organically deranged, was good. If man were basically good, then only a black enchantment could make him evil. So we're talking about enchantment now. We're talking about, I don't know how, can I just say, we're only in chapter 4. I don't know how anyone in Scientology is able to lie to themselves that this is all science. At every single given point, we've been looking at things that are outside of normal scientific thinking. So I don't know how anybody in Scientology has convinced themselves that what they're involved in is a science. But anyway, did we admit superstitions and demons as actualities and suppose the source was something weird and wonderful in the way of ectoplasm? Or did we part company with many current beliefs and become something a little bit more scientific? Of course, every time he mentions something that's not scientific, he must always bring us back down, like, don't worry guys, we're not these airy fairies, this is all science, right? This is what he's doing. The source then must be the exterior world. A basic personality so anxious to be strong probably would not aberrate itself without some very powerful internal personal devil at work. Okay, so again, the blame is on these devils, these demons, whatever. But with the devils and the things that go boom in the night, heaved into the scrap heap, what did we have left? There was the exterior world and only the exterior world. Good enough, says who, if you ask me, but anyway. We'll see if this works again. Somehow the exterior world gets interior. The individual becomes possessed of some unknowns which set up circuits against his consent. True, that is true of demons, by the way. Although, you guys should watch my oh gosh, I need to do some videos. The individual is aberrated and is less able to survive. So again, he's assuming that everything that we do as humans is for the purposes of survival. That's what he believes in all of his research and everything that he's done. That is the thing that we all have in common, and our motivating factor as humans, whether, cultured or primitive, to use his words, is that we want to survive. The next hunt was for the unknown factor. The track looked pretty fair so far, but the idea was to formulate a science of thought. And a science, at least to an engineer, is something pretty precise. It has to be built on axioms to which there are... Sorry, I always say it like that because that word reminds me of Jordan Peterson because he always uses it. Sorry, which there are precious few, if any, exceptions. It has to produce predictable results uniformly and every time. Again, that's a flawed statement, I would say, as far as the scientists are concerned. Yes, it is supposed to produce predictable results uniformly and every time, but there's a lot of science and a lot of scientific beliefs. I was explaining this to one of the kids that I teach this literally last week, and I was explaining how the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again, expecting different results. And yet, me, myself, when I was in the lab, seeing real life scientists who are doing the same exact experiment like 100 times because they know that this experiment is going to only happen once and they just need for it to happen once. So not all science is based because everything happens 100 out of 100 times. A lot of it is we know it's possible because in all of the times that we tried, we got it to happen once, which means we can get it to happen again. And then this is how all of these factors of how you get things to happen actually can change, because sometimes then scientists will notice, if we increase this or we increase the pressure of this, we can shift the equilibrium to the right, which means we'll get more of the product that we want. So there's a little bit of an oversimplification, if you ask me. Nevertheless, perhaps engineering sciences are this way because natural obstacles oppose the engineer, and matter has a rather unhandy way of refusing to be overlooked because someone has an opinion. If an engineer forms an opinion that trains can run in thin air and so amidst the construction of a bridge across the stream, gravity is going to take over and spill one train into the stream. Of course, thus, if we are to have a science of thought, it is going to be necessary to have workable axioms which, applied with techniques, will produce uniform results in all cases and produce them invariably. Which again, just the simple existence of airplanes is exactly, for me, another example of why I get what he's saying, and he's right that yes, there are things that are going to be like, if you can't just form an opinion that a train can run in thin air and then expect that it can happen, because in this case gravity is going to take over and spill one train into one stream. However, at the same time, scientists found ways to counteract gravity with the use of the wings of the airplane and these incredible jet engines, which you guys know I'm absolutely obsessed with airplanes. They're like my favorite of all the areas of science, right? Particularly the jet engine. And so all of us could be sitting on an airplane, 400 of us, odd, with cargo and everything, being plunged tens of thousands of feet into the air, crossing countries and everything. That's not supposed to be possible. But there are ways and calculations and able to do stuff. And so, you know, I think there's just a little bit of oversimplification going on here, if you ask me, and a little bit of like trying to steer thought by saying things that people might not necessarily think into. Because yeah, if you're talking about this train thing, then of course everyone's going to agree about that. But then also, who knows if we're going to find trains that do that? And arguably, is an airplane a train that can actually cross over a stream and not be affected by gravity? I'll leave those thoughts with you guys. A great deal of compartmentation of the problems had already been done. As previously mentioned or in the course of work, this was necessary in order to examine the problem, which was man in the universe. First, we divided what we could probably think about and had to think about from what we probably didn't have to think about for purposes of our solution. I don't know why he always does this, but anyway. Next, we had to think about all men, then a few men, finally the individual man, and at last a portion of the aberrative pattern of an individual man. How did the exterior world become an interior aberration, right? So we're saying that whatever is happening to us, we've already accepted, and we're saying that everything has been proven, or suggesting that anything that we do that is not good, that is not evil, that is not optimum of ourselves as humans, is coming from an external factor, although he hasn't actually referred to us as humans, but he said man, is an external factor that must come from the exterior world, not from the interior. So that's why he's saying all of this. So how does this, whatever this external thing, actually get into affect us in the interior sense? There were many false starts and blind passages, just as there had been in determining what an optimum brain would be. There were still so many variables and possible erroneous combinations in the computation that it looked like something out of Kant. Oh, he's talking about Immanuel Kant. Isn't he the one who was the one who was obsessed with ethics? He was like a philosopher of ethics, if I'm not mistaken. Is that what I was talking about? Anyway, but there is no argument with results. There is no substitute for a bridge heavy enough to hold a train, except from creating enough force so that the forces of gravity on the airplane are greater than the forces of gravity keeping the airplane up are greater than the forces of the gravity coming down. So that's actually not even true. Like, unless I'm missing something here. He says there's no substitute for a bridge heavy enough to hold a train. Yes, there is. Finding a way to have a stronger force. And this is the thing, guys, about the universe. And you can tell here, he's calling himself an engineer. He's using all these different things to do with science, but like physics itself, in and of itself, is saying that everything has forces that are in balance. And as long as one force is greater than the other, then it's going to have the effect. You can shift something in one way or the other. Like I was explaining about equilibriums before. Like one of the most basic ways that equilibriums was explained when I was studying was, if you have like a gas molecule and you've got an equation and you've got A plus B gives you A plus B plus C. A plus B gives you C, D, and E in the little equilibrium symbol. If you increase the pressure, for the simple fact that there's less molecules on the left, the equilibrium is likely to shift to the left. So you can actually, the fact that it was doing it in the way that it was doing it to begin with can be changed, because that's how things work in science. In the same way I'm saying, like with an airplane, yes, it should make no sense for a multiple ton machine to be cruising comfortably through the skies while I watch Iron Man in the airplane. But the fact is, the calculations are done. Even when you get in an airplane, the pilots calculate the weight, the takeoff speed that the airplane needs to take off with the weight of people actually on the plane. This is just I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. Tell me if I'm missing something, because that to me just sounds wrong. But then again, if you say the wrong things to people that don't know that it's wrong, then they're going to think it's right, which is why, I think a lot of people are overwhelmed with all these different belief systems, because it's like everybody's claiming to be right. How do I know what's right and wrong? And this is why I'm a believer of science, and I believe that anything that is true, including God, will stand up even in the face of pure logic, like what I just said. So anyways, I tried on the off chance that they might be right. Several schools of psychology, Jung, Alder, even Freud, but not very seriously, because over half the patients on the rolls had been given very extensive courses in psychoanalysis by experts with no great results. The work of Pavlov was reviewed in case there was something there, but men aren't dogs. Looking back on these people's work now, a lot of things they did made sense. But reading their work and using it when one did not know did not know, they didn't make sense, from which can be concluded that rear view mirrors 6 feet wide tell more to a man who is driving with a peephole in front than when he knew he was approaching an object. Okay, let me read that again, but reading their work and using it when one did not know, they didn't make sense, from which can be concluded that rear view mirrors 6 feet wide, right, tell more to a man who is driving with a peephole in front than he knew when he was approaching an object. Okay, fair enough, I get that. Then came up another of a multitude of the doctrines which had been originated to resolve this work. The selection of importances. Okay. One looks at a sea of facts. Every drop in the sea is like every other drop. Some few of the drops are of vast importance. How to find one, how to tell when it is important. A lot of prior art in the field of the mind, and as far as I was concerned, all of it is like that. 10,000 facts, all and each with one apparent unit importance value. I'm pretty sure every drop in the sea is not like every other drop. But anyway, we're not even going to get into that either. Because by nature, water has all... Anyway, we won't get to that. The selection of importances. One looks at a sea... Oh yeah, that's just the thing. And then they've got a little diagram. I do like these sketches. Whoever did these sketches, I do think they look very... They've got a very nice vibe to them. Now, unerringly, select the right one. Yes, one has found by some other means the right one. It is very simple to look over the facts and pick out the proper one and say, see, there it was all the time. Old Woosis knew what he was doing. But try it before, you know. It's a cinch. Old Woosis did not know, or he would have tabbed the fact and thrown the others away. So with this new doctrine of the selection of importances, all data was not of personal testing or discovery was jettisoned. I had been led up so many blind alleys, but unthrough observation and careless work on the part of forerunners in this business, that it's time to decide that it was much, much easier to construct a whole premise than it was to go needle in the haystacking. This guy is so cocky. My gosh. He is so cocky. He says, by the unthorough observation and careless work on the part of forerunners in this business, that it was time to... So he's basically saying, like, I'm not going to do what all of these lot were doing. I figured this out. I'm the right one. So, you know, whatever, dude, like, whatever helps you sleep at night, honestly. Nothing was working. I found I had imbibed unconsciously a lot of prior errors which were impeding the project. They were literally hundreds of these. Why? Everybody knows that ... which had no more foundation in experimentation or observation than in Roman omen. Okay, I kind of get what he's saying. So it was concluded that the exterior world got interior through some process entirely unknown and unsuspected. There was memory. How did we know about memory? How many kinds of memory might there be? How many banks was the nervous system running on? The problem was not where they were. That was an off-track problem. The problem was what they were. I drew up some fancy schematics, threw them away and drew some more. I drew up a genetic bank, a mimic bank, a social bank, a scientific bank, but they were all wrong. They couldn't be located in a brain as such. And can I just say, guys, a lot of times when scientists are saying stuff like what he's saying now, you're supposed to show your work. Like, you're supposed to show... did all of those banks he just listed. He should have had diagrams and he should have explained and showed the critiques of why they didn't work, because the whole point of being a scientist and a constructive thinker, a critical thinker, is you're supposed to have the opportunity to look at the information and the data for yourself to see if you too agree with what the claims that are being made with what everyone's putting in front of you. It's the same reason why I find it interesting how in lots of very demonic, very evil sectors of Christianity that have existed before and now, they purposely will do things like have a version of the Bible that's not that the rest of the congregation can't read or is in a language no one understands. Well, why would you do that? Because you're stopping people from having the ability to critique it for themselves. Anything that you're going to suggest or state, you should give people the opportunity and the place for them to be able to critique what you're saying. Not just say, oh, I did this and I drew up fancy schematics. Again, who decided they were fancy schematics? For all we know, he just drew some stuff on a piece of a napkin while he was at a bar sometime drinking some whiskey, feeling on top of the world, realizing he was about to try to deceive everybody. So, you know, just saying, like, then a terrible thought came. There was this doctrine of the selection of importances, but there was another earlier doctrine. The introduction of an arbitrary. Introduce an arbitrary, and if only an arbitrary, the whole computation goes out. When was I doing that? What was I doing that had introduced an arbitrary? Was there another why everybody knows that still in computation? So he's saying these assumptions that we have come from nowhere, which is kind of ironic because bro's the same one right now saying a lot of stuff that he's not giving us exactly where that comes from, and then talking about it like, oh, this is what we know 100%, works 100% of the time, whatever he says, because he's an engineer. Anyways, I'm just trying to see what his definition of arbitrary is here, so I make sure that we're talking about the same thing. So he says arbitrary in his definition is something derived from mere opinion or preference, something unreasonable or unsupported. So what he's doing, because what he's saying is unreasonable and unsupported, because he's not even explaining or showing half the stuff he's talking about. He's referencing things that other people said that weren't quite right and saying that obviously they weren't quite right, but this is what's right because obviously I'm an engineer and a mathematician. Like, literally, it's crazy. Anyway, it's hard to make your wits kick out things which have been accepted. Unquestioned from earliest childhood, hard to suspect them. Another sea of facts, and these in the memory bank of a computer trying to find them. So I agree with that a lot of us and a lot of human society is a lot of things that we all just believe just because we all believe them. And I actually do think it's one of the defects of humans. If you grew up being told certain things just because it was your parents and they were good parents to you, you automatically believe everything they said. And there's nothing wrong with that. I do believe that it was always God's intention that it's supposed to be the wise who are above or who know more, who share information down the line. But it does kind of create a lack of critical thinking in humans, because then people don't really question things for themselves, because they're just like, oh, well, how do you know this? Like, I even say that to people all the time. They'll be like, oh, yeah, like with a lot of the stuff I talk about on this channel. How do you know this? Oh, because so-and-so said it. And it's like, but who was the so-and-so that actually said it? Like, and where was this being said? Because you're just saying, oh, we know this is this because this. It's like, there's nowhere that it comes from. So I do agree with him on that. Anyway, there was an arbitrary who introduced it. I don't know, but it was probably about the third shaman who practiced shortly after the third generation of talking men had begun to talk. Mind and body. There's the pleasant little hooker. Take a good look at it. Mind and body. This is one of those things like a ghost. Somebody said they saw one. They don't recall just who it was or where, but they are sure. So that's exactly what I was just saying. Who said they were separate? Where's the evidence? Everybody who has measured a mind without the body being present, please raise both hands. Oh yes, sure, in books. I'm talking to you, but I'm not there in the room with you right now. The audacity is crazy. So mind is naturally separate from body, only it isn't. A man's body can leave footprints. Those are products of the body. The products of the mind can also be viewed when the body is not there, but these are the products of, and the product of the object is not the object. Okay, so then he goes on to say, let's consider them a unity. So he's just gone and said that I'm going to discredit what other people have said because yes, you might have said it, but it's not, I wasn't there to see that as real. Is that not this whole book? But then we're supposed to trust him. For what reason? I don't know. I just don't understand. So anyway, he then goes on to say, so let's consider them a unity. Then the body remembers it may coordinate its activities in a mechanism called the brain. But the fact is that the brain is also part of the nervous system, and the nervous system extends all through the body. If you don't believe it, pinch yourself, then wait 10 minutes and go back to the time you pinched yourself. Time travel back. Pretend you're all back there. You will feel the pinch. That's memory. All right, if the body remembers and if the body and mind are not necessarily two items, then what memories would be the strongest? Why memories have the pain? Why memories that have pain in them, of course. And then what memories would be the strongest? Those which would have the most physical pain, but these are not recallable. Maybe it's the wrong postulate. Maybe people are in 50 pieces, not just one. But let's try it on for size. So I think we'll stop here because we've been going on for about half an hour. And I think seems like a good point to start a new video and to kind of draw a line here. So what basically, we're still trying to get to this understanding of like, so what is this thing? How is this whatever exterior thing getting into us, and how are we going to evaluate? He's going out of his way more and more to say, well, all these people, all of these trusted names. That's why he's what's the word for that? He's name dropping. He's doing a lot of name dropping of like this and this philosopher, and Freud said this and Kant said that, and you know what I mean, to kind of add some levels of like credibility to himself and make him seem intelligent and know and smart, right? But a lot of the stuff he's saying doesn't make sense, because how are you going to say that? How do people know the mind and body are separate? Because yes, you've written about it in a book, but I wasn't there, so how do I know? But then we're supposed to trust in what you're saying when we're also not there and we also don't know. In fact, you're even less specific than other scientists. I've read lots of scientific papers in my time. I have had to read them, like when I was studying. And it absolutely, to this day, I am so impressed with how detailed scientists get into their physical, beliefs about things that they do, and how they show you the data. They have to show you the data. That's why we haven't seen one figure in this book. Normally in the scientific research, or anyone who's claiming something scientifically, as they're explaining certain things, they'll be like, as you can see here in figure 2, 800 people were tested for such and such, and you can see the split. Then there's probably going to be like a graph as well to show the changes. Then they're probably going to include other people's work to compare, to say, oh, this is what the other people saw as well, because it's a community of scientists. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And the way we go forward is everybody kind of does their bit, and you show what you have and we all bring it together. So for me, the fact that this is in here, and he said that these are his observations and research, because that's what he said in the book. Is not like, he doesn't claim it to be some kind of Bible. This is his observations and research. And yet, where is the actual research? Like, where's the data? Where's the graphs? Where's the stuff to show you that, oh, this is exactly where I got this from? He's referencing a lot of things. Like I said, in other things, when he's talking about, I did the scientific banks and this, we would have been able to see that. It would have been dated. It would have been specified where this was happening, so that if other scientists want to see if this is true, they can follow your work and do exactly what you do. That's why you include a method of how you do your stuff, so that if your claims are true, other scientists should be able to replicate your claims, number one. But number two, so that we can see, other people can critique, because we're supposed to be working together, not just being some one self-absorbed, godlike figure with a God complex like Ron Hubbard, where you see what somebody's done and maybe you think of a variable that they didn't think of, and you continue that research. And the other scientists aren't going to be mad. Well, sometimes they do, because there is a lot of pride in the science community, I have to admit. But the idea is that, so if you consider something somebody else didn't consider, then you can take also what they've done, and we all come together with all of our brains together. So I don't know. I just find it interesting how he is doing he's taking us far away from what we currently believe about the popularly as a science community, talking kind of rudely about a lot of these other scientists and people that came before, who at least a lot of them, their physical research is either at least being shown. I mean, maybe it's not in the book. If you guys know about his scientific research that can be quantified somewhere, please tell me. I'm more than happy to go and evaluate that as well. But he's making a lot of claims that his claims are a lot unsubstantiated, and he's having the audacity to try and say to us and use that as a reason to discredit what other people are saying. I'm just a bit like, and so now we've entered into maybe the mind and body are just one, and this nervous system malarkey. So we'll see where we're going with this. Like, stay tuned. This stuff is crazy. And the more I go into this, the more I understand how smart this guy is, like on a different level of witchcraft. Because for me, witchcraft is about manipulation and control. That's the basis of witchcraft, right? So it's about manipulation and control. How do you manipulate and control somebody? Because you're doing things that are outside of their will, and they're better understanding if you weren't manipulating them. It's like if somebody lies to you, you ask them something and they lie to you, they're manipulating you, because you might have made a different decision had you not been lied to. And this is why I believe that the Lord says that lying is a sin, because it's like you're taking away from people their right to their own choices, to be able to make decisions for themselves with the full understanding of what is available. And so with all of this, it's the same thing to me. It's witchcraft. Like, you're taking advantage of the things you've realized are weaknesses and defects of humans, and rather than pointing them out in order to point us back to God, who is actually worth trusting in because he's not going to take advantage, you're using it to point it to yourself and your manipulative tactics that is observably causing people stress. I mean, Scientology is considered a cult in and of itself. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah. Anyways, Yeah, if life's a game, let's play to win. This stuff is crazy. I don't even know how we ended up here, but I'm loving it because it's really interesting. It's so interesting to hear what this man has to say. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think of these Scientology videos? We are going to get through this whole book. We have to. If it takes all year, we'll do it. Because I think it's worth it, and I think it's always worth, like I said, anything that you're looking into, you should always be prepared to look at all the data, all the texts, and actually read them for yourself, rather than just take what somebody says or just assume you don't like something because of what you heard. So that's why, even though other people like to just talk about all the celebrity stuff, which I will obviously talk about as well, I'm like, okay, but what is actually getting people involved in this Scientology thing, and what is the basis, and is there anything that actually is making sense here? So anyways, if life's a game, let's play to win. God bless every single one of you. I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.